Right. We are here. Welcome to Quarantine Check. And my guest today is a cornerstone of the Southeastern Michigan comedy scene, the very funny John Campbell. John, what have you been up to?
Thanks, Robert. So you can see I got a whole bunch of stuff spread out in front of me, and that's because during this pandemic here, I've been trying to, as I go out into places where I might get it, develop different systems that keep me safe, relatively safer than I would be just walking into Kroger without any equipment on. And so most of this is stuff that I've looked up on the internet for how to do DIY stuff. And so I've got links here with me for the different stuff that we can maybe include along in the comments of the YouTube thing.
Cool.
When it gets posted, even if I don't get around to getting them. But I think the reason that I wanted to show this stuff is that a lot of it is works in progress, and that too, a lot of what the resources I'm using to make this stuff is works in progress. And that at pretty much at any one given point, I'm using almost everything I've learned about this stuff combined into one type of deal for when I have to go somewhere. And then also too, because even though it's not what I would consider essential, there's a lot of people trying to get carpet done, which is what I do for a living. And there's some places where no one's been in the house for a while, but I still am worried about, because people's feet tracking it around, that I don't think it's wise to go anywhere without a whole bunch of equipment. So this is as good as it might be to have the equipment. I'm really only doing it for people who are kind of in the situation where they already had this empty house that's been, in one case, empty since 2019. But even then, that it's not worth rushing it at all, because the more time you kind of spend exposing yourself to it, even with all the gear, the more your chances increase for it. And even no matter who you are, no matter how well isolated you are, you're going to have some amount of contact with stuff. So hopefully someone sees this and starts doing a similar type of thing. And like I said, I'll give all my resources, but they're not the best ones. They're just what I'm working with. And that's why I've included, instead of just the nice little final product here that I'll, like for like the face shield, right? I'm going to show, if we have time while we're talking about comedy stuff, different older variations that I've made and what the problems with them were, and so why it influenced the design. Not that this is the best design, but this is just the best one for what I've got figured out right now.
I had no idea that you were a regular MacGyver.
Yeah, neither did I. I did not want to do this shit. Did not want to fucking do this shit at all. She didn't want to do this shit. She didn't want to be involved in production. I have mountains of little scrap stuff flying around in their house. And again, this is going to be another case where my producer's suffering is going to lead us to have a smoother experience, because I'm going to try and share with everyone, if we have time, different things that have helped me make less of a mess while I'm going through this process. And I mean, some people are just going to be making a mess, one of these for themselves, but other people are going to want to be, these are the headbands on this.
Okay.
And so 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. I'm not going to hold it close enough for you to count them, but I could just count it here. These are 7 headbands worth of things, you know, so like different things of how to store your materials when you're doing production scale amount of it. And it's kind of funny. It's like comedy, you know, when like a joke goes wrong and you find a new tag to it and dealing with how bad it fucking bombed. Like a lot of the things that I've been figuring out were just through different failures and different problems that I've had. And I'm still having a lot of problems in doing all these things and implementing it once they're done, even in their final forms. It has problems, but all those things are able to inform how we're doing it. And so going to scale, that's a big accidental thing in production, because I was really, and in a very selfish way, only worried about my own work, right? Going out to do this carpet for myself. You know, even though I was like, well, if I can provide it to people, yeah, that'd be a bonus, right? But like right away, way before anyone's even allowed to go out, I need to get the best gear together I can possibly get. And so I wasn't in need of a quantity of mass, but the material that you can get, even in the smallest amount that I started with, was enough for more than a dozen masks easily, even if it was, and this was during the total not knowing anything prototype party, where I was making way more waste than obviously I am now, not just in being disorganized, but not knowing what size would be good, not knowing what my final thing would look like. And like I said, because it involves, there's still an element to that now. But all of the different mistakes, so little crappy stuff like this or whatever, where it doesn't look so good, it's all beat up. I'm going to be showing you a couple examples of that, because even though obviously it's hard to see through this thing, and I kind of took it apart because I'm, coming up with better ones, that this shitty mask taught me how to make much better masks in basically every measurable way, including the system in which it's, expected to act, which would be important for people doing scale, which a lot of people are going to want to do when they go and try and, through whatever avenues they have, I'll give them the ones that I use to acquire these materials, that the smallest amount of material you can get is actually quite a bit of material. Because most of my face shields are the most close to being totally done, and that's what I'm going to focus on. The shields, which require a clear vinyl, and that stuff, it's impossible to get less than 45 inches of it. You can get like 1 yard by 45 inches, and that's a relatively small size, especially when you're going and dealing with the thicker vinyl. You want to get the thickest gauge, which is actually a higher gauge, unlike a lot of gauges where the lower gauge is thicker. The higher gauge vinyl is the thicker vinyl, because the better it holds its shape, and that's what the thicker stuff does better, the less you get stuff like wrinkles, so it increases visibility, paradoxically, because you would think you couldn't see through it. No, it looks I would much prefer having the thicker vinyl, but you can experiment obviously with your own stuff or what you got around your house. But if you have the option and it's the same difference to you price-wise, definitely go thicker, because these things holding their shape, at least when you don't have a hat or something, just putting it right on your face, thicker vinyl works way far better.
I'm just going to say, John, you have been way more productive with this time in quarantine than I have. You've accomplished actually building something. All I've done was watch the entire series of Fringe.
Oh no, but see, I haven't watched any Fringe, so you're kind of ahead of me. And like what you should really do is get a producer / romantic partner / like patron to fund your
like Narco.
Yeah, like this is my mom. I'm gonna answer this really quick. But.
Okay. We're gonna listen as John talks to his mom.
Hi, Mom. I'm doing it right here and right now, so you're on it, even if you don't end up finding the link to see it. So I'm gonna hold you up the speaker and just say hi real quick. So when you find it, you can find yourself on it too. I'm gonna give you this info in a second. So say hi, okay?
Hi, John's mom.
Yeah, that was my friend Robert. Had kind of been working with on the production end of stand-up shows, and so he, like as Jasmine showed you in the picture, that it was about doing mass kind of is what we're talking, because it's a quarantine check and he's checking with all these comics. But anyways, I should let you go, so that, because Jasmine, she's my executive producer, and she's able to handle the link stuff. All right, so thanks for calling, Mom. Love you, and I'll talk to you after this podcast. All right.
This is the first, John. Usually I only have one guest at a time, but I have you, your producer / girlfriend, and your mom on one show. This is history in the making, and that you're actually teaching us something, how to do something, with our time. This might be the most practical episode ever.
I don't mean to insult your other episodes, because I'm a big fan of stand-up comedy, obviously, and personal friends with some of your guests. But yeah, this just like I said, I was able to accidentally find some good stuff, and I want to share that. But I bet other people, especially comedians, who might be watching this, because they've been on it or going to be on it next, to see what the format's. Even though they don't have to bring a project, I don't think you make them do this.
No.
They can make these masks and do it better than I do, or find me a link that's like better video.
Well,
so behind, I'm going to say this one thing and then I'll let you go on. But behind every great face shield is a dude who designed it, but had great women behind him who fucking bankrolled the shit.
That is good to know. That might be step number one be able to create something like you're doing.
Yeah, and that's important to acknowledge too, that step one is to have money. And that's why, to the best of my ability, even if I was able to afford more fancy materials, that if there is a cheaper option, I'm always interested in doing that so that as many people can make it as possible. The more the people that are protected, the more you're actually protected. So even if you're not some altruistic person that's like, oh, everyone deserves something, you could be the most selfish piece of shit in the world, and it would still make sense to you to have everyone get as much equipment as possible.
Let's actually kind of talk about that. This whole pandemic has shown how a good majority of the population is really selfish.
Yeah, and that's really not that surprising, although it is sad. But it does just kind of emphasize the need for you to take care of yourself in terms of protecting your own health, because a lot of people are not going to do it. And what's ironic is their eagerness, as I'm going through the process right now, and I might get another call from my mentor in carpet installation about our clients that we're working with, as some of them are able to understand why we are only working in certain situations until this is over. And even then, we're going to take a big extra long time, which hopefully we have time to get into, because Jasmine actually helped with some of the science behind that in terms of the physics of, we're doing something with the floor where a lot of people don't have to deal with. So they might not have any chance of getting COVID, but by the fact of us ripping up their floors, that COVID that they might have tracked in with their feet and never had contact with is now in the air, and they or us might breathe it. And so a lot of people aren't able to leave it empty for 14 days, right? Because even though we're taking all these precautions, we're not going to risk someone breathing and having live stuff still in the air. And so they're trying to go do other people. But we're trying to warn them that when you do that, don't fucking go in the house while they're still doing that work. And if you do, have every piece of gear you can possibly have on you, because stuff that was inert basically is now activated and in the air. And then from the research that Jasmine did, which was based on actually astrophysics, it was in star formation, but it was dust particle behavior, that as it goes up from the original kick is when the particles are at their smallest. That means it can get through the holes of whatever type of filter material you're using. When it can only go down to 0.01 or 0.3, whatever it is, microns, these things are smaller than that as they go up. But as they reach terminal velocity, like as fast as they can fall, as gravity, wind resistance combined, but they finally speed up as much as they can, they're all going the same speed, they start to clump together more. So right when that stuff is happening, you really don't want to be in there without total stuff. But then after you go in there, like when it's coming down, maybe you can go in there with all your gear on, because it'll start to clump together, and it'll be easier for even maybe cotton, hopefully, to catch some of the really big ones. But anyways, that a lot of the people who are so eager and are mad and say, give me the name of some other guy who does carpet right away, their eagerness to get work done is going to cost them money in the long run, because as they kill off their clients, and as their clients see businesses like me, even though like conscious capitalism is kind of a joke in itself. Ha ha ha, I brought some comedy to this. That the businesses who are trying to actually be human beings about this and worry about people instead of just money, those people who spend the money are going to see they are trying to take care of me and not just my job and my money. And there are actually a lot of people who are really not just being understanding, but excited about all the different things that they're going to use us for based on this. But even then, we're still, if they get to be a little too excited about it and don't want to have us rush and not be safe, then, then it's not worth even that. But that's the more important thing. But it's really not necessarily going to kill us financially at all. In our particular instance, some people, in some careers, there's really no wiggle room or whatever. And I've been always in starting to do this work in carpet installation, very blessed, because my mentor, Ken Largan, is very not just someone who installs and sells carpet, but he is a very wise person who collects obsessively information about business and about how to treat people, about philosophy. And even though some of the stuff I don't always agree with it, because obviously some of it's old, right? And he recognizes that it's flawed, that he's learned a lot about sales and then business in general, where the model we're using has always been way more profitable than other people's models. And it also gives us way more control to not just, oh, well, we can say what we're doing, but we also have control over the materials to the point where we can do a better job and faster. But with this, we're not as worried about being fast as we were. So yeah, I feel like all those
Better to be
people
safe than fast.
not only will it hurt their, what's that?
It's better to be safe than fast.
Yes, and all these people, just like in a lot of economy and business stuff and in life in general, in their rush to be fast are slowing themselves down long term.
Good.
That as they rush to make their money, we're going to get a second wave, we're going to get a third wave, we're going to get a fourth wave, and then they're going to be required to be shut down, and they're going to lose more money if they just spent a few months. Probably, I mean, it's easy to play shoulda, coulda, woulda. So in the meantime, that's why I'm really excited to be talking with you today, not just because I miss all my comedy people, but because of the way and the research that I've been doing. It seems like being in a bar where you're allowed to drink drinks, because then you won't have the protection, you can do it for 30 minutes max. So our current model of stand-up comedy will not work. Even with like gear and stuff, it's too much time in the closed environment. And so, yeah, it's exciting to talk about comedy and stuff, but like this stuff, the better we are at this, the faster we get back to those shitty old open mics, right, fellas and ladies?
So
and,
let's actually talk about that.
I got really fucking ableist or genderist there. But my point is everybody, benefits from doing what we can to do this shit. And I'm as smart as I can be trying to do this shit because I got advantages, people help me out. But you all collectively are smarter than me, even though some of your dick jokes suck, though.
So actually, let's kind of peer into the future, John.
Mm-hmm.
What do you see as the future of stand-up?
Well, I don't see a future of the current form of stand-up that I am used to, whether or not other people go with kind of what's evolving out of what we got to exist until at least 2021. And that's me being very optimistic. And even then, I wouldn't personally do anything unless things had totally been like way calmed down and literally every single person that was in there. And this could be a 20-minute experience at most, right? Where like every person is masked up all the way with the face shields on top of the mask. And the mask that I'll show you guys how to make out of a regular t-shirt without cutting, that'll be on top of the mask to secure it on and provide an extra layer of filtration. And that thing does not go longer than 20 minutes. And we don't sit around afterwards talking about how good it was. Because you can probably still hear people laughing. Right? You can kind of hear that even on this shitty old microphone a million miles away over at the other end of the room here. And so, and two, from reading people's body language, I know we're like probably really good as comics at seeing what's happening on people's faces. But a lot of times the lighting, if there's good stage lighting, you can't see their faces. You can kind of see their outlines more. So the mask is really not going to affect that. It's going to affect a lot of people's delivery for sure, being able to hear it and stuff. But there are certain principles that even people who have very crisp, clear articulation still have to adhere to, because it being a spoken medium, we naturally need to slow things down and make little breaks where people have time to hear the words, but also to get the ideas, right? So when we add pauses and shit like that, we normally have to do that or our joke sucks ass. So like there might be a shot for us to do it geared up, but like even then, like I said, like it wouldn't be any time before 2021. And this is me personally, and it would have to be everyone on board with that. And it's the enemy of good comedy venues is high ceilings, but the higher the ceiling, the better in terms of I'd rather have a shitty show where no one had fun, but no one died.
Right.
Crazy. But yeah, go ahead.
It's kind of scary that within the matter of since the quarantine happened, that practically a whole medium could die out.
Yeah, and that's if definitely it goes the same way that it's been going, and people keep going on waves, and it's just something we always have to deal with. I wouldn't be able to put myself in that position where I'd be telling jokes. So you'll find a lot of performers drying up. You'll find a lot of the audience drying up. And sorry I'm doing the t-shirt thing ahead of time, but I just kind of wanted to get that started, or else I'd never get time. So I just kind of talking about the picture with it. And yeah, like that basically all this stuff is just the first attempt at it, right? And then we're going to learn from that as well. But in terms of comedy, I'm not going to be down on that first one, right? I'm going to be telling the joke that I've tested a million times, but other people kind of test it for me. Normally, you can't take jokes in this, but this is different than comedy. This isn't our own acts about what a unique individual we are. They're just like me. I know a guy like that. Like, this is about, like, everyone needs to do this stuff, and everyone needs to keep each other safe so we can get back to being free individuals, which is hilarious and makes me want to do comedy. So, yeah, for the t-shirt mask, you just stick your head through the hole like that, line this thing up with your nose, the front mask of it. You want to make sure these are good out, perfectly even on the sides, because these are going to be your ties. And then you flip the very back part where the hem, the hem is, that bottom part of your shirt right here. You flip that over the top to make like a little hat. I have to go a little closer here. So here's the nose thing. Flip this over the top so it's like lined up there to make a little hat. And then when you tie these things back together, that's good that I messed up there, because to show you that it's almost never on the first thing, right? And so you adjust it to make it as small as you can, and you get there, and that's a little cloth mask. Now, one layer by itself, this thing is not going to be that effective, but that's something that you can do with just a t-shirt that you have. And if you have like a pillowcase, right? They did studies where the pillowcase, if you seamlessly integrate that into the cotton fabric from a t-shirt, and if it's on a good mask, which we got time to show you how to make from little patterns and stuff, that combination has a 74% effectiveness rate, unlike the 95% of the N95 masks that no one can fucking buy that are being sent to China. So this I'm actually going to combine with, for my particular material. Oh yeah. So I got reminded by my brilliant producer that we've got links.
Yeah, they will be in the description below.
Okay, yeah, they're going to be in the description, but I just found them on Facebooks and other stuff for this one. The reason I didn't pick a specific link I might not be able to access to people is because I saw a couple different versions of it, and it's kind of like some of them didn't work anymore because they're old, because it's an easy and good technique to make the mask out of. But if you can combine this with something else, which is what I do, then you'll get some really good amount of filtration. Because I've got access to interfacing material like Pellin, which is a sewing thing. It's also very similar to the manufacturing process for matting, M-A-T-T-I-N-G, which is a type of quilting thing that they use to help stabilize, kind of like this is used to stabilize sewing stuff. Cute kitty. And they'll tend to be a little bit thicker, but the manufacturing process is the same, where I believe this will be much more good than a, than a standard cotton thing. So I'm combining these, the regular mask with that, putting it on with a sock mask just for the elastic, basically.
Now, how effective is that?
By itself, very not effective, right? When you use this to put on the Pellin, maybe not that effective. Use this to put on the Pellin plus the t-shirt on top of it, more than 74% effective. Likely. But we haven't done the research for that. Not scientists. But then you put this thing on top of it. This one has a hole in it, so I wrote prototype, which is a good tip when you're manufacturing. If you get faulty material, to find that in your inspection process and to label it so it doesn't get mixed in with the good stuff. The shape and stuff is good for this. So I would say, if we had to estimate as non-scientists how effective the combination of the Pellin plus the sock mask to hold it on, plus the t-shirt thing that I just showed you over top of it, plus this over top of everything, and by the end of the video I'll show you all together what that looks like, at least if there's time. Yeah, I'm taking forever explaining this shit, and I didn't even let you get your comedy questions. But yeah, my best guess is more than 74%. Yeah, my producer has advised me to actually not be so fucking boring and preachy and take a comedy question. She didn't use those words, but I read between the lines.
No. But it's interesting because we haven't actually ever hit on the topic of safety on this show.
Oh, I mean,
Most of us are staying inside, except I go out once a week to go to the grocery store.
right. And that's the thing that's good, but also it has in me, I didn't have any desire or knowledge about this stuff before. But even as it became a pandemic, it was not some like noble fucking thing where I thought I was going to help everyone. It was because I thought to keep my important clients who could keep me fed for a long time after this, that I might have to do work in houses that even though they might not have people who are infected, the floor might have the RNA that I'm so fucking afraid of. And so that's why I started doing this stuff. Because even though I was going out like with even more improvised than this stuff, I figured that my equipment and total almost avoidance of everyone was enough to keep us safe. And it kind of had, but I'm in a way grateful that I was pushed into, and it's not from her pushing, but it's from just the industry and people who I'm working with. And, you know, it's like my clients are like people who give me other clients. So it's their individual autonomous people who are like, oh, let's get this done right away, you know? And like, and I get that, and I shouldn't mock them because it's not that, but it's not when most of them, when they hear how safe it is, not only are they not complaining about it anymore, they are thanking us, and they're using that knowledge to inform other type of contract work that they're doing. So, but yeah, what other, do you have some good comedy questions?
Yeah, well, let's talk about comedy. Let's talk about what made you want to start doing it in the first place.
Well, I was always in regular life, like unable to not make jokes constantly and obsessively, which I thought was strange because I remember at a very young age, maybe like 7 or 8, trying to write jokes and thinking that it was impossible and that like people who had written jokes before, like street jokes and stuff, you know, like 2 on television antenna, have a wedding on the rooftop and the ceremony wasn't very special, but the reception was great.
Yeah.
Right? Like that joke, to me, I couldn't figure out how someone came up with it. Like once I knew how the puzzle fit together, I can figure out why they thought that was funny and how they came up with it. I had no clue how they came up with that from thin air, that they must have been able to see into the future somehow and really had kind of given it up. Oh, I love the movie Joe Dirt, and so my producer just reminded me that when I'm doing this stuff, maybe people won't believe the scientists because, as they say in the movie, who is going to believe us? We're just a comedian and some Indian, Indian and some guy in the movie, and David Spade is some guy. Well, I'm the comedian, which David Spade is a very respectable comedian.
Is he?
Yeah. He was.
I think he's funny.
He was like, I love SNL, and I love all of our improv friends, like at Planet Ann and all those. From what happened in Second City, that means I also like the Go Comedy people here locally. That's really cool. But I feel like they have dominated their improv people, SNL's thing. Obviously, since the inception was a big Second City alum fest in the first cast, and that tradition has continued. Where like Steve Martin, that was the stand-up right in the beginning, the actual stand-up comedian. These were improv comedians, and that I always get really excited on SNL, whoever is a stand-up. And so it was really cool when like I was a kid in the 90s, it was more stand-ups on SNL than there ever will be and ever was before, I think.
All right, besides Sandler and Spade, who else?
You had what's his face? Maybe it was only 2. No, I swear there's oh yeah, Colin Quinn.
Right. I don't get wrong.
You know, and you're gonna laugh as I did too, as I'm forgetting the other person who did stand up. Yeah, a little bit. Was Norm fucking Macdonald?
You're right. I forgot about him.
Like, not that Pete Davidson isn't a good stand-up, and Michael Che is really strong, right? He is an amazing stand-up, right? But like in terms of how much adulation he receives, and like how much people are so eager to sing his praises for so long. Norm Macdonald has achieved probably more critical acclaim than almost any other stand-up, right? And like definitely Michael Che doesn't have the whiteness and the Canadianness and the friendliness going on, right? But he's got a lot of the same talent. But I'm talking about just numbers and money and like critical acclaim, number of reviews. They're like, oh, he's the best, right? So like, yeah, like I definitely think that. Is Michael Che even on SNL? I don't watch TV in a really long time, but I just know he's on some sketch show. And I've seen his stand-up, and it's real fucking good. It is top notch. And so I like it when they put good stand-ups in there, but it's always only going to be a couple. So anyways, yeah, David Spade's stand-up was actually very good. And it was overshadowed just because of Norm Macdonald. But yeah, he was a real stand-up before going into SNL. And definitely very much like respected, at least in like the Comedy Store type circles.
I always got the impression that stand-ups on SNL don't last very long, because you had Sarah Silverman for a brief period of time on there, Janine Garofalo.
Yeah, Chris Rock, another monster of stand-up, especially like success, who probably is even more than Norm Macdonald, but maybe not as much critical acclaim. And a lot of that has to do with probably race and class, but definitely he got a huge chunk of critical acclaim well. So he might be actually, but because on SNL, like they were constantly writing him out of stuff, you know, he did the good Just Chillin' sketches with Chris Farley. Oh my God, those are so funny. I love things with the fake advertisers. And that was a seamless integration of the sketch, plus the little fake products they made, like Get Effed Up Malt Liquor. There's promise to F you up.
Chris Rock, to me, already had success before Saturday Night Live. He was in New Jack City. He was in I'm Gonna Get You, Sucker.
Right.
CB4 too.
Right.
That was during Saturday Night Live.
Oh yeah, I don't know.
Which really brings into question what exactly happened to get him written out of skits, because in the show's inception, the like second season, when Chevy Chase shows up, the movie star, like he's like elevating the show, he's elevating the things that they're all doing, and he's a huge focal point of the show. Whereas Chris Rock, they just hung. Chris Rock is like Chris Rock to SNL, to use the sports. He's like the fucking Allen Iverson of SNL, right?
I don't know what that means, but I'll take that's a bad thing.
No, I mean, it's Allen Iverson is probably one of the greatest athletes to ever play basketball. But in terms of like at the teams he has with these huge contracts, the number of minutes he was on the court versus on the bench, it's insane. Like they would get mad at him or say he was, you know, they would have issues with him, and they would say it was about things centered around the game, like, oh, he was too selfish, which is things that they would say about Chris Rock, right? Or that, you know, that he wouldn't, he was taking too many shots as a point guard, right? But like one, that was part of his tactics and the way that he would control, and he would call plays based on that. But two, I mean, he did end up racking up tons of assists and was a brilliant point guard. But a lot of people say, especially people who are paying attention to racing class in something as, like there's people who pay attention to racing class in sports, but usually it's like just so that they can say something disparaging about how these guys make too much money and they have it so good, and like who needs reparations. It's not me. Wow, this got off the rails. But Alan, that people who studied stuff like that and would look into it would often say it's very possible that Allen Iverson was too unapologetically black, that he had his hairs in cornrows, which is no big deal now. Guys are doing that all over the NBA, but he was the first to do it. He was covered in tattoos, which is even the white athletes now covered in tattoos. But when he did it, it was a big fucking deal. And I think it cost him lots of playing time. And this is too a Detroit thing, right? Because he played for the Pistons. And I never saw him even dribble the ball during a game. And like, we've got the best point guard probably in the history of the game, right? In terms of like just being able to have the skills that a point guard needs, being able to have the mind to do it. And especially the stuff about him fighting to be unapologetically black. That's the type of fucking leadership that you need in a point guard. And we didn't use him at all. And that is no disrespect to Chauncey Billups or the backups who they played instead of him, right? But it's just like, instead of those backups, you could have a real leader who is one of the best to ever play the game, but you don't like about how he's talking about that there's injustice in the new city you moved into. One of the worst in the whole thing.
I'm going to be honest. My knowledge of basketball is limited to the Will Ferrell movie Semi-Pro.
Yeah, and that's why I should bring it back to comedy. Just like in sports, right? A lot of things gets pushed out, but like there's a lot of a comedy where there's crossover, like Harry Condabalu. I don't know if you can. Oh, okay, yeah, you can see him up there, right? And this is another guy who's a stand-up first, right? But because of him working on the show, Totally Biased with W. Kamau Bell, that's even though it's very much based in current events and politics, it is also a sketch show, right? And so there are definitely people in comedy that I looked up to that are in the sketch world, and there is a bunch of crossover. But again, like I in my head, they're very different mediums, and I think it's good that people do both, and they can help you in them. But like, I think maybe for now, the future of comedy, like in this quarantine, might be a lot more improv and sketch based, because that's the tools that we're working with. Getting a live audience, a studio audience, not safe. I'm not gonna fucking do it. And honestly, if any of you fucks do it, I won't watch your shit. Not that I did before.
No,
I'm trying to keep shouting out comics, but
I'm glad you kind of brought this up. I'm the weekend we're recording this on Thursday the 14th, and this weekend Kansas City is opening back up.
Good luck.
Yeah, the owner of the Kansas City Comedy Club posted on Facebook asking comedians who's ready to come perform. The majority of them said no.
anyone who said yes is guaranteed a hack. I swear to God, they're gonna be the worst fucking open micers. Like Jane Dodd, it's gonna be Jane Dodd. Look up CC Dynamite. I hate to shout her out. But look up CC Dynamite, and I tell you that who is all I without even talking to her, I'm willing to bet that if it's not her, like she's the only person willing to do it, it's someone just like her who is willing to do it.
Or someone just brand new to it.
Yeah, someone take advantage of. Yeah, I'm not going to go anywhere to see comedy, right? I mean, you know, it's my favorite probably art form.
I don't know. I'm gonna mention it right now because every Thursday and the occasional Saturday, Comedy at the Comic Shop is presenting virtual open mics. And you
yeah, and I want to check out one of your open mics really soon, but also it's kind of like that's why I don't like kind of not that there's. I'm glad people are trying to make stand-up work through Zoom, but in my head, the accessibility issues of people having to be able to have Zoom and like, well, you don't have to have it like this thing. You could be watching this on YouTube, but for me, just because my technology is always way junky and behind, that it can be a real drain on your resources just to be able to watch something like a video. And so I don't like the idea of it being even more so geared towards only upper class people with extra time on their hands. I mean, maybe there can be some way to do something positive about that, but it's a very personal relationship that you have as a stand-up comedy performer with the audience. And I love how like technical and serious I get about my jokes about like farting near the sun, right? But like, even as bad as the jokes are, I do think about them very seriously. And anyone who's seen my act knows that, because if they didn't laugh at the correct volume level, I chided for them immediately and got very serious and probably didn't even do jokes for the duration of the thing and just berated them. And maybe got laughs, but it wasn't from jokes. It was just because they thought it was so funny that I was so easily upset because how serious I take it. And
let's talk about the last time I saw you, which was on my show at the wonderful Green Brain Comics.
Yeah, the relationship. Yeah. So that's a great example of how riding that line of berating the audience and hoping it's funny when I don't get the initial reaction I wanted, where more so than a lot of my recent performances, people came up to me saying that they enjoyed it, which I was very happy to hear, because I'm like, well, where were you during the laughy parts, you know? Like,
man, they were laughing during your set. You had a great set that night.
Well, thank you so much. But as I say, the relationship between a stand-up comedy performer and an audience is so personal, especially in a quality venue like you got there, where it's very small, low ceilings, right? Is that you're right. I guess they were laughing at some of the stuff, but I didn't like the way they were laughing. I did not. And like, I'm glad that you recorded it, because like, yeah, maybe they were laughing, but I can go back and be like, see that? They were mocking me.
They weren't mocking you. a 3 or 4 year old kid was the only one that was mocking you.
Yes, I was bested by a child and then got really mad about it. And it was like, why are you on my side, everyone?
Yeah, I gotta tell you, I was really worried about that show. Because first of all, people canceling, but I love the Homance Chronicles, and I was worried about actually not having an audience at that show. But we had one.
We had one in a large part thanks to them and their delightful families who came out and supported and were good laughers. But like I said, I didn't like what their laughs conveyed.
I don't know, man. It's like going to
not all of them. And like I said, it's something that I'm really failing and making an ass of myself right now because there's so much information being passed back and forth that it sounds crazy, but it is possible to get laughs on maybe all of your punchlines and still feel like those people didn't get you or that weren't enjoying it the way they wanted to, but they were more having a cursory enjoyment. And that's usually what I'm upset about, is not that they're not enjoying it, but that they're pretending to enjoy it when they don't, because it's okay. You can fucking not like any of my shit. That's a high probability, even though I worked really hard on it and maybe technically good for some of them, like with stuff like callbacks or whatever. It's still jokes about my penis. You don't have to care.
What I think is weird, and you might be the same way as me, is when I'm on stage, I only zero in on the person who's not laughing.
Well, yeah, human beings are wired that way, so we process danger, and that's the danger to us having a good time. That's the danger to everyone having a good time. And though I will admit, one of the most productive things that I've learned in comedy is, one, to look people in the eye, and that's why I probably look weird as fuck during the Zoom meeting, because when I'm filming stuff, I'll have a person stand behind it, and my producer is doing technical stuff, so she can't be the person that I look at, but I'll look much more natural when I'm actually talking to someone. And I tried for probably 2, maybe 3 years of stand-up to imitate that, looking over everyone. It's infinitely easier to look everyone right in the fucking eyes, move it around the room. And so that keeps me from isolating too much people, but I'll pick a representative for every chunk of the room, which is the friendly representative. Who's the friendliest person on the left wing? Who's the friendliest person on the right wing? Who is the friendliest person in the back? Who is the friendliest person up front? Those people, one, that's good to know for afterwards if you want to network and show them stuff like this podcast. Maybe they'll make a mask or have a laugh after the show. But during the show, they're even more important because they are the ones that you can look at, and you'll be more confident when you see a friendly face. You'll be more natural in your mannerisms so you can sell the joke better. But also, they'll start laughing sooner. A lot of those people will laugh during the goddamn setups. They'll start laughing sooner, but definitely your punchline's louder. The people near them, because it's contagious. Laughter is contagious. That's why we can't do live comedy until we fix this shit. I don't know why I'm holding up random shit every time I want to think about masks and proper equipment.
I'm actually
like the focusing on those people while you can still not leave anyone out, even mean people, as long as you just have one friendly representative, and then it'll spread out from there. And that way, even though you look everywhere, you only engage with your friends.
True. That was a good rant.
Yeah, that's some good comedy shit.
So we only have a few minutes left, but before you, I want to talk to you about the first time we met. You remember where that was?
My guess would be Cave with Sam Rager hosting.
It was the first Cave that she hosted.
Oh wow! Because I was thinking about the timeline and when we first met, and I knew that it was a Cave, but I had to think if it was Sam Rager or if it might have been during the previous Jason Brent era of Cave. And it's so funny because Jason runs all these shows, and it's like, that's really cool that I'm always doing it. But like, for me personally, even though I'm glad for the scene growing, the coolest thing I think he did was do Cave, because even when it's bad, it's kind of good. So shouts to Sam Rager for keeping that going, and for Jason for keeping it going as long as he did, plus the brilliant relationship with this really fun place in Clawson. But yeah, it could have been just as easily Jason Brent, because I think you probably looked it up or something. You knew that was Sam Rager's first takeover one.
No, because I remember her saying it was, and I also remember it was a Super Bowl Sunday, and the weather sucked.
Well, yeah, and it's so funny because I went to that with high spirits because I knew that like there's hardly, even if people wanted to go to that one, there's not enough room for non-comics to be in that building while we're in there. So like I never had like, it's not that it was bad, but I never had high expectations in terms of attendance.
Okay. Do you remember who was on that show with us?
Well,
There were like 5 or 6 comics.
I know Lincoln was on the show for sure.
No, he wasn't. He was not on that one.
Oh, well, then why don't you tell me who was on that show? Because my memory is clearly bad. Because I know he was on the next one. Because
it was you, me, Wes Ward, Paul Pipitone, Sam, Craig McCoy, and one more person.
Was it Alex Sheik?
No, he wasn't doing comedy at that point.
Okay. I assume
that might have been it. I think it was you, me, Sam, Craig McCoy, Paul Pipitone, Wes Ward, 6 people.
Wow, that's really cool. And like really, you and if you take
Jason Brent showed up at the end.
Nice. Well, that still follows the theory of what I was going to say. If you take out yourself and Craig McCoy, because you guys are the 2 experience-wise babies, even though you're both grown adults, right? Like that, you had just started comedy, and all the other people there are relative babies in it that were young people, and we haven't been doing it that long. But like for people just starting out, like there's decades of experience in that tiny little open mic. And that's why I think a lot of times I was able to have fun, because when you're faced with people who've had to sit through that many open mics and they don't laugh at your thing in the daylight with the bright sun coming at you, you don't get that offended. Even though, everyone at Green Brain, everyone who's ever seen my comedy I love to get offended at people not loving the shit out of my shit. I will always say I refuse to write better jokes. I've not written a single goddamn joke during this quarantine, but I will make people like me more.
I think you've been on this year and the end of last year and this year, you've been on a roll. Your comedy has hit that next level. And it really sucks that comedy has been put on an indefinite hiatus the way we're used to.
It sure does, because that's been one of the bigger motivations for me not being as productive. I mean, I've still had ideas and I write them down, yada, yada, yada. But that's more just like muscle memory refusing to fade on into oblivion than anything. It's not good and it's not fun. So thanks for tuning in.
We do have to wrap this up. But before we do that, I've become a big fan of Craigslist misconnections.
Ooh, love those.
Yeah, and I've been realizing it's the worst of the worst people who write these. So I am going to read one to you, and hopefully you can crack a joke or a snide comment or some kind of riff off of it. Okay?
Or I can throw this thimble that I never used, but I got out for my demonstration. Because that might be a helpful thing in terms of things that you might need to make these masks. I have to make another mask video.
Okay.
I've been having a lot of fun talking comedy about you. But go ahead and read your Craigslist.
So this one's called Let Me Spoil You. It's from my hometown of Livonia, Michigan. Hey, girl, just got my stimulus check. That's $1,200, baby. I'm not selfish. I don't want to spend it on myself. I want to spend it on you. I want to take you to Target and buy you something sexy to wear. That's right, baby. I want to spoil you by buying you something sexy. Then we'll go grab something to eat, maybe Chili's. Then we'll go grab a bottle of wine before going back to my place, where you'll hopefully spoil me. Hit me up if you're interested.
When he says that he's going to buy her something sexy, is he talking like this right here? Because that's what's sexy to me right now, is different types of face masks or whatever. I brought too much stuff, so I can't even show you hardly any of the face mask. I hope that's what he means. Because, yeah, good God. Wow. He wants to go to Chili's. No Chili's is like, are they going to eat it in the car? Actually, that's kind of cool. I should not have said that, because now I would totally like eat Chili's in the car.
You know, it's weird that there have been people who've mentioned Chili's. I didn't even know Chili's was still in business.
Yeah, a lot of carry-out places are doing pretty well, but I wouldn't trust that stuff myself. And that's another thing of privilege where I'm saying I wouldn't trust that stuff myself, because I got my patron, producer, and romantic partner here providing me with a place to live where it's like I got the kitchen and I can go and take flour and take buttermilk and boom, have bread instead of just a bag of flour and some nasty old sour ass milk. If I can't combine the oven, if I don't have bowls, if I don't have the space for all that, then yeah, I better go to Chili's or McDonald's or some shit and just hope I can find the one with the best safety rating so I don't fucking die.
Look,
so
I'm actually amazed I have not gotten this disease because for the first few weeks before quarantine, I did not take it seriously at all. And I thought this was something that was just going to pass after like 2 weeks. I'm an idiot. I wish
my producer wants to know why, and you before she could even really officially ask, you answered because you're an idiot, and because you're human, because we all make mistakes, because you're living in a society that values money over people, that every dollar you spend is literally signing off on the death warrant of someone else, and that it's like we were watching this video about postmodernism, right? Where the CIA literally hired people to paint those shitty paintings, like that red line on a white canvas, because they figured the more they sell the narrative of nihilism and things meaning nothing, that even art and literature that is against the system and that is anti-capitalist not only is sold through capitalism, but that it takes away its meaning, because to be sincere is the most fatal flaw that anyone can commit if you're trying to stick to the postmodern aesthetic. And so definitely there is a lot of things that even things like, that's why Kurt Cobain, they said in this video, was always so sad, and it seemed to make sense, that he didn't like this system, but the more he said he didn't like it and became popular, the more he helped that very system that he despised gain legitimacy and extend its reach into people who were more slightly on the critical thinking side of things and saw through the first layer, like of modernism and that technology, like World War II era stuff will save us, and the future toaster and all that shit.
Well, yeah, we become blind to reality, and I think we also don't want to see what's going on around us sometimes. Like, as I've stated this many times, this is the most traumatic event of our lifetime. For now.
Yeah, we're on track to beat the Holocaust. So America, go team! It's because that's just with deaths in America. We're going to beat the Holocaust before the end of the year, probably.
Is a genocide on the people that occupy this territory. Is it that?
Yeah, I mean, it really could just be collateral damage as we fight against indigenous people, indigenous sovereignty here on all this stolen land. But even if it's just collateral damage, it is very real to our dumbasses too. And we are very much suffering the consequences of it. And it's
When you
even
say,
it might have been
we, who do you mean we?
White people, non-indigenous people, and indigenous people too are all fucking dying from this disease. And even though it is entirely possible that it was designed with poor people in mind, with people of color in mind, with specifically indigenous communities in mind, that they are definitely willing to sacrifice their own.
Well, we are not just dying from the disease, we are dying from stupidity because of the government not taking it seriously, much like myself early on.
Right, and as we're saying, this whole trick of postmodernism, even things that point to the truth are to be viewed with skepticism so much that they might not even point to the truth if they're commodified, and we see so few things that aren't commodified. And that's why the documentary we're watching was talking about how within the lens of postmodernism, that even that documentary itself might be postmodernism and a joke to make us feel better, like we're fighting against something, or we're just sitting at home watching this 4-hour-long YouTube thing. But anyways, that it's not a surprise, even though it's sad and you might be facing consequences and repercussions from this coronavirus thing and not taking it seriously. This has been over 500 years in the making of us being so tied into capitalism that literally the video said, and I think it was good, that it's easier for us, and if you look at the movies we have about the future, it is much easier, so much easier to envision and imagine the end of the world in a disaster than it is the end of capitalism. that even in these movies with the asteroid and all that shit, they're clinging on to capitalism still, and they get to critique it a little bit as it's falling apart. But the only reason, the pretext for it falling apart, is that like the like a literal explosion type disaster or a volcano or something is the only thing that could take out this system that is really ultimately unsustainable and based on infinite growth. Even if people weren't getting exploited, infinite growth is completely unsustainable. Fuck people, what about the planet? A lot of these things extract resources at a horrendous rate. With infinite growth, you know, we won't be able to live on the planet. It won't be from people getting exploited by the business. It'll just be the fact that the air you can't breathe, not like because it's got corona. You can't even breathe a little bit. I should chill it down, but also thank you all for watching.
And on that note, John,
thank my producer for enabling all this, and thank you for setting up your end of that. Because, like I said, that technology thing is a huge privilege. And even though I'm sad that, you know, I know that you're going to be facing some struggles, thank God that you got the privilege to hook up on your end. And then I got my patron and producer and romantic partner helping me on my end, so we both are on Zoom here together on the YouTube.
And John, before we go, we have a great episode tomorrow out here.
Yeah,
Marco Gonzalez.
Nice. Yeah. So it's like sitting down with stand-ups. I imagine that's going to be a real smooth episode because of all the experience that he has with that, and he won't be so fidgety. Even like, please tell him to do a mass project. I know I said you don't normally make people do it, but I feel like he would be a great host.
I'm also going to tell you that episode has already been recorded. So while it's happening after you, it was recorded earlier.
Oh, okay. Well, then I can check it out and enjoy it and not have to be like in the comments like, hey, do mask. You're doing a good job.
And I'm also going to say that we are going to be ending the quarantine check-in in the next several episodes.
All right. Well, as long as we're not ending the quarantine.
Good luck.
We are going to be pivoting to a weekly podcast after that.
Right.
Noah Chapp will be our last guest, and also will be the first guest on the new show.
Hell yeah. Well, I'm super sorry I didn't show you guys more stuff. I'm going to put a bunch of different resources in the links, and hopefully resources about resources, stuff on top of there. But
just send them to me and I'll put them in the description.
Yes, that sounds good. I'll send you all that stuff so that when this is on YouTube, you can go down, scroll down below us and find the links for this stuff that I didn't get to show you, but there's a lot of talented people who got to show you on YouTube. And like I said, there's a lot of really talented people watching this, and y'all fuckers should be doing some of this because you can see I fucked it up a little bit. I had a lot of fun. Thought that would be a great podcast. I didn't make a mask here.
But you showed us what you have made, including your cool mask that says prototype, because there's a hole in it.
Yeah. And then I'll also want you to include, and I know you'll be able to do this, like not just links because a lot of them are videos, but like text things of like what you need, lists of supplies and stuff for that. So that when I'm talking about, oh, not everyone has access, and then here's a link to YouTube. Bye.
All right. That'll be awesome.
Thank you.
Stay safe, and we will see you guys tomorrow.
Thanks, Robert.